We're supposed to start chapter 8 on intelligence today, but I have to finish up chapter 7. But we're going to make it work. The first thing is on page 273 that has to do with problem solving. Did anybody have, I put a note here. Aren't the problems on pages 273 to 275 fun? You don't remember reading that? You don't remember them being fun? Did you agonize over any of them? Well, are you ready for this? Looking at the problems and trying to figure them out is not near as useful as reading the answers. You go, what? Yeah. I mean, you can try to figure them out just for the fun of it if you want to, but it might frustrate you. But if you go back and read the answers, you go, oh. Or you might even say, there's no way I would spend that much time trying to do that. I would just get another measuring cup or something. But when you encounter problems, probably the best thing you can do when you're stumped and can't figure it out, because the tendency is to say, well, if I can't figure it out, who cares anyway? It's like just to skip it and go on with your life. And the best thing to do to enrich your own problem-solving abilities is look at the solution and see how they got it. So that in a sense, what you're doing is you're expanding your own personal repertoire of problem-solving skills. Or at least you're expanding your horizons in terms of looking at problem-solving. So don't get all bent out of shape. Because they say, let's begin with some problems. I would say, I kind of wish they would have said, let's begin with some problems and here are the solutions. But they want you to kind of struggle with them a little bit, and sometimes that struggle discourages people. I think personally, when I'm teaching little children and little kids problem-solving skills, my approach is that the more successful you are, the better problem solver you become. So don't give them such hard problems that they can't succeed and they get discouraged and give up and lose heart, but rather give them little problems that they can do successfully, and then you watch it in their eyes and their face. They go, I did it. I go, yeah, let's do another one. I did it. Yeah, let's do another one. So that it's kind of like the idea that being successful is so rewarding that it encourages you to be more successful. And not being able to do something is discouraging. It just doesn't motivate us to keep moving. So set the stage so people can be successful. So we're not going to spend a lot of time looking at those problems, but I am going to spend some time doing something in here that I think is productive. On page 275, they start talking about problem-solving strategies, and we'll talk about those in just a little bit. But before we do that, do any of you, can you think of a problem that, go ahead and give her a couple of those too. Can you think of a problem that you would like to have a solution to? Any kind of problem. I love problem solving so much that I actually look forward. The last time I did this, here was the list of problems that I had submitted. How do you balance work and pleasure? How can we solve world hunger? How can I manage my time? What's the difference between hardware and software? What can I do about crazy thoughts? How do we solve the problem of bullying? How do we become emotionally stable? How do we pass classes in college? Why am I always tired? How can I develop better eating habits? Does it matter when you do devotions? Is there ever a time when not telling the truth is okay? Here you go, Sedaine. We're writing down problems that you would like for me to help you solve. I'm not reading a list that came to me the last time I did this. You understand? I'm open to any kind of problem you might encounter. In fact, one of them's not in here that I remember. Someone had put down, how do you buy a horse?
That's a good question.
And what I do is I take your problems home and I get on the internet and I see if I can find some help to try to answer your problem or solve your problem. And the purpose for doing this is to show you as a class that you have a resource available that we didn't have when I was in college in your situation. And what is that called? The internet, where you can Google stuff and find out all kinds of information. And maybe you've already figured that out, but I just want you to, you don't put your name on them, I just want you to write some problems on those little papers, then I'm going to pick them up and take them home and spend some time on the internet seeing if I can find solutions to your problems. And the purpose again for doing this is to show you that you have a resource available today that previous generations didn't have. And if I can't find a solution on the internet, what would I probably do? If it was a computer problem, I would probably ask somebody over in IT. You follow me? I would look for someone who has some expertise and consult them. If it was an electrical problem, I would ask an electrician. If it was a plumbing problem, I would ask one of my friends at church who's a plumber. So, problem solving, probably of all these problems they give in the book there, the one I like best is the matchstick problem on page 275, where you're given these matchsticks and you're told to do what? Arrange the 6 matches so that they form 4 equilateral triangles. And if you try to do that on a flat surface, it doesn't work. But if you put 3 of them on there and then put a place in the air and put the other 3, let's see, what can you not see here? Oh, you can't see the back of it. You follow me? Then you go from a flat surface to 3 dimensions. So you've got 3 of these matches laying on a triangle on the table, then the other 3 going up to make a pyramid. And that produces 1, 2, 3, and the 4th triangle. And I think the reason I like that one is it makes us see, if we're looking at a flat surface and we're trying to solve a problem, we tend to think we have to solve it in that flat plane. And learning to think in that 3rd dimension, and I think the phrase that you hear floating around in the world out there is that think outside the box. You know, where you kind of get stuck in a little box and you're thinking, and so you think outside the box. You simply say, what can I do outside of the realm of where I'm thinking now? So it's almost like, for some reason, my thinking gets boxed in, and I want to think outside that box. So what are some ways to solve problems on page 275? Selecting solution strategies. What's the first one they mention here? On page 275 at the bottom of the page?
Trial and error.
Trial and error. Did you ever think of that as a problem-solving technique?
Yeah.
Trial and error. You try something to see if it works. If it doesn't work, you try something else. Again, guess what seems to be a natural human tendency? To try 2 or 3 things and it doesn't work and you give up. Does anyone know how many light bulbs Edison made that didn't work before he made one that did work?
Over 2,000.
What does that tell you? He could have easily given up and somebody else would have invented the light bulb, but he just kept working at it, trying to find whatever it was that would make this thing work. And I'm not sure I'd have the perseverance to work at something that long either, but I'm glad he did. Else we'd be sitting here in the dark and we would be confined to doing most of what we do. After the sun comes up and on cloudy days, we would be kind of shortchanged. On page 276, it talks about another approach, information retrieval. You start thinking about, have I encountered a problem like this in the past? You're faced with a problem. You're saying, what do I do about this problem? I know what you ladies do. Call my dad.
Yeah.
I mean, don't you? All right, does that work? You call your dad, he tells you what to do, he helps you get on the track to solve your problem. That's a good strategy. So basically, it's retrieving information in the past. The last time I had a problem, I called my dad, he told me what to do. I'll do that again. Now, again, everybody says, well, you have to learn to do this stuff on your own. See, in my thinking, it makes sense. Call your dad or call your mom or call some expert and ask them. And then once you've called those people and got their advice and it worked, you've become a more capable problem solver. And then when they're gone to heaven and you can't call them anymore, you'll be the one that somebody else was calling you, asking you for help because you've developed some problem solving skills. So I think it's a good idea to check with somebody who has some experience with it. Give them a call and ask them how to do it. I will confess that I called a plumber friend of mine and asked him how to solder copper tubing together, and he told me what to do and I did it and it didn't work. So I had to call him and have him come over and do it and hire him to do the work for me. And while he's doing it, he's just laughing. He's going, you know, Tom, he said, I couldn't teach your class at the college and you can't sweat pipe together. I said, there you go. And I'm glad you're here to help me, and I'm glad I'm here to help your children in school, because his kids came to Calvary. And I said, we just help each other. Another one is an algorithm. Have you heard of an algorithm? Where did you hear that word? In math class? Or have you heard it someplace else? It's basically a method for solving a problem. I gave you an algorithm the other day for solving the problem of forgetting a phone number when you're trying to call it. What was my algorithm? Anyone remember? What did I say to do? I look at the number in the phone book, and then what do I do next? Say it out loud.
Yeah, and you chunk it.
And then I chunk it and say it out. I chunk it and I say it out loud, and then I punch it in the phone and it stays with me. That's an algorithm. It's just a procedure for solving a problem. When you add 32 and 69, what do? You have an algorithm. You take I'll better write it up here so you can remember. 32 and 69, and I say add them, and what do? You take the 9 and the 2, and you say that adds up to 11, right? Which looks like this, but you can't put 11 down here, can you? You can only put this 1 down here, and then what do you do with the other one? You carry it over there. Remember that algorithm you were taught? And then you add this up, and it's 6 and 3 is 9, and 1 more is 10. And you put down the 0 and put the 1 over here. So 69 and 32 is 101. And if you want to look at this differently, now see, I teach a lot of algorithms because I teach math. But then, see, I'm thinking for some of you, when you're going to help some little kid learn this stuff, you go, watch, look at this. What's 60 and 30? Isn't that 90? And then what's 9 and 2? Isn't that 11? So what's 90 plus 11? Well, 90 plus 10 is 100, and 1 more. You see what you can do? See how you can break it out into pieces and talk about it and think about it and help the child that you're working with understand the algorithm and understand why it works and how to use it. But sometimes when you're doing math, did some of you have math teachers that when you said, how does that work? They said, it doesn't matter how it works. Just take the formula, plug the numbers in, and do the work. Now, for me personally, it's more fun to help people understand why the formula works, but there's something to be said for just memorizing the formula and doing the work because you know you'll get the correct answer. So there's some merit in both kinds of things. What's a heuristic? Well, it's when you don't have an algorithm. So a heuristic is more of like a general approach to things. Have you figured out my heuristic for solving a problem? I'm going to take all the problems you've written on these papers. Do you have them all written up there for me? You ready to give them to me? All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're still working on some? Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, now, basically, my heuristic will be, I'm going to, maybe you can say my algorithm will be, I'm going to go to the internet and see what I can find to answer your questions. And what if I can't find something? Then I turn to my heuristic. So what do I do if I can't find something on the internet? Then I'll probably go looking for some people with expertise in that area and see what they have to say. If when someone said, how do you buy a horse? My algorithm would have been, Google, how do you buy a horse? And if I didn't find anything, I would call a friend of mine who owns horses. See that? I'd go to my heuristic, call a friend of mine who owns horses, and say, hey, can you give me some pointers on how a person would buy a horse? He goes, why, are you interested? I said, no, I have a friend who wants to know how to buy a horse. But I didn't have to do that because I actually found an answer for him on the internet. What are some obstacles on page 277 to problem solving? Well, the first obstacle is motivation. Did you try to solve those problems in this book? No. I looked at them and said, who cares? Have you heard that little joke about what are the 2 biggest problems in the world today? And the guy said, I don't know, and I don't care. And then the guy said, okay. He said, well, what are they? And then the guy who asked the question said, ignorance and apathy. And what is ignorance? I don't know. What is apathy? I don't care. So the first obstacle to solving a problem is just, I'm not motivated. Now, see, I tend to think that God created us to be problem solvers. So what happened to us as a human race that we lost our interest in solving problems? It could be no one ever taught us how to do it effectively, or it could be we tried it and we got in trouble for it, or it could be we tried it and it didn't work and we just gave up. But when you're working with someone who doesn't, I work with little kids and say, hey, let's do thus and so. And they say, I don't know how to do that. I said, well, I do, so we can do it together and you can learn how to do it, okay? Okay, he says. Then I give him a tool and I say, so do you know what to do with this tool? No. And I said, well, let me show you what to do with this tool. And it just happens that I have an interest in teaching little kids how to use tools. So when my own daughters were in grade school, I was teaching them how to use a drill, screwdrivers, wrenches, to put things together and take them apart. They weren't as interested as my grandsons have been in doing that, but at least I got to teach them some problem-solving skills. One of the biggest problems I think I ever helped my daughters learn is we were out shopping one time and my daughter looked at this dollhouse, these big old things, and she goes, Dad, can we buy that? I said, I don't know, how much does it cost? And they wanted like $150 for it. I said, what do you think, girl? She goes, I don't think we're going to get a dollhouse. I said, oh yeah, I think we'll get one. It just won't be that one for $150. Let's go home and figure out what kind of dollhouse you want, and I'll go to the lumber yard and buy some lumber and do what? Build one for you. And we built one, and that worked for her for a while, but she kept thinking about that one. You've seen the ones where they have the tiny little shingles on the roof and they're really complicated. And I said, well, you're going to have to save your money for a long time to buy one of those. I said, unless we can find a kit somewhere that we could buy the kit a lot cheaper and then put it together ourselves. She goes, I don't know how to put it together. I said, I think we could read the directions and figure it out. And sure enough, we found a kit that you could buy and we built that little dollhouse. And the first one we built, that was more like a little doll log cabin, was useful for a while, but then we had to step it up a pace and build something a little more complicated. Another factor on page 277 that can hinder problem solving is your mental set. Our tendency to perceive problems in a certain way. Have any of you driven from campus to Walmart? Did any of you experience any frustration? What kind of frustration did you encounter? All the traffic? How many are bothered by going down County Line Road and getting on the interstate to drive out to the exit on 58 for Walmart? How many of you get a little nervous pulling up on that interstate? Am I the only one? So what would I do? How do you get from here to Walmart? Go down County Line Road, get on the interstate, go to 58, make a left turn, and go to Walmart. Is there another way to get there? See, mindset. Is there another way to get there without driving on the interstate? How do you get there if you don't drive on the interstate?
Go down to the stop sign, go left to the stop sign, go right, and just keep going on that.
And you go down to the stop sign here on campus, you make a left, you go to where it stops, that's Scott Street. See, I don't know the name of the street, I just know you can't keep going straight. I make a right turn, and I follow that road while it curves around, and it takes me all the way to Walmart. And you say, but sometimes if I'm wanting to go to Walmart during rush hour traffic when people are coming home from work, it can be a real traffic jam going that way, or going the interstate. Does anyone know the other way? Breaking that mindset. Does anyone know the other way to get to Walmart? Down County Line Road till you come to the, isn't it like looks like a little miniature water tower there?
I don't remember.
You've never been that way?
I've been that way, it's just been a while.
There's some kind of big round, at the corner, there's some kind of big round metal container. Huge big thing. Maybe it's an oil storage tank or something. You turn right when you see that tank, you drive down that road, it's a little country road, you're going south now, you made a right turn, and what do you know? The road dead ends when it gets to 58 highway, and guess what's right across the street over there? You make a right turn, go half a block, and get in the lane to turn left to go to Walmart. Oh, you didn't know there was a third way to get there. You understand that your mindset, you only have one way of doing things. Your mindset can get in the way of you solving a problem because you're not willing to think outside the box, to look at alternatives. You're making a cake, you got your mixer going, your mixer breaks. What are you going to do? Well, I have to go to Walmart and buy a new mixer because I can't make a cake without a mixer. You can't? Did people used to make cakes without mixers? How did they mix the batter?
By hand.
With a spoon, a big wooden spoon or something, and by hand? Well, I know it'll hurt your muscles because you're used to an electric mixer, but get that spoon and start whipping it up. And mindset. Much of our formal education involves learning sets and ways to solve problems, learning heuristics and algorithms. But, so learning a set way of solving a problem is a good way to solve a problem, but can also become an obstacle because you're kind of stuck in a rut. So if my normal heuristic or algorithm doesn't work, then I say, okay, I've got me a new problem here. What can I do to solve this problem? What approach can I take in trying to solve this problem? It says there the most successful problem solvers have many different sets to choose from and can judge when to change sets or when to abandon them entirely. Great ideas and inventions come out of such flexibility. One type of set that can seriously hinder problem solving is functional fixedness. The more you use a certain object in a certain way, the harder it is to see a new use for that object. Have any of you seen on the internet a guy who starts a fire with a chunk of ice? My grandson told me about that, and I'm going, what? He likes to watch this survival stuff. I go, a chunk of ice. You use a chunk of ice to do what? To cool down your drinks? How could you start a fire with a chunk of ice? Anybody want to guess? How many have ever taken a magnifying glass and held it outside over some grass or cotton or something, and the sun goes through it, forms a point, and concentrates the sunlight, and it starts to smolder and ignites the cotton or ignites the grass? How many have ever done that? 1, 2. The rest of you? Now, see, we have some problem solving skills the rest of the class doesn't have because we've messed around with magnifying glasses. Did any of you take that magnifying glass to see if you held it next to your hand and made a little spot on your hand if it would burn you? Did it live? Did it?
I've done that.
Yes, okay, you've done that. Okay, if it'll burn your skin, do you think it might be if I put that on a little piece of cotton, especially if it has some Vaseline on it or something flammable, that it might ignite it? It will. Now, why are you talking about a magnifying glass when you're talking about starting a fire with ice? Well, guess what this guy did? He took a chunk of ice out of a river, and then he started pouring water on it to shape it like a magnifying glass. Then he held the chunk of ice in front of the sun, so the sun was shining through the chunk of ice, shaped like a magnifying glass, and forming a little white hot dot on his fire starter, and all of a sudden it goes whoof and pops into flames. And what's my first reaction? I start laughing. Why am I laughing? Because he's thrown me off balance mentally, and I'm going ha 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 to regain my equilibrium. Because I've never thought of using ice like that before. So watch out for functional fixedness. That I've just got my mind fixed on a certain thing I do with certain stuff, and that's all I can do with it. Number 6, part of the learning process is to assign correct functions to objects. This is how we form concepts, but we need to be open to seeing that an object can be used for an entirely different function. An object can be used for an entirely different function. Do any of you know what a wood chisel looks like? Okay, I have a wood chisel laying on the floor in my car, on the front seat, right down on the floor. And you go, what is that all about? Well, what I would really like to have is a knife. Well, actually, what I'd really like to have is a gun. So if someone came up and tried to carjack me, I could just shoot him. But my wife goes bonkers over that thought. So I thought, well, if I had a knife and they came up and tried to carjack me, I could just stick them in the hand, and while they're going, ah, I drive away. Well, my wife doesn't like knives either. So what's the next thing I have in my toolbox at home that's about as sharp as a knife? A wood chisel. So I put a wood chisel in my car and I carry it around as a defensive weapon in case someone tries to carjack me. Although we were traveling one time down in Florida, and Nina said, Tom, roll up the windows and lock the doors. This looks like a bad area of town. We might get carjacked. And I said, Nina, we're driving a Nissan Sentra that's about 10 years old. And right next to us is a guy driving a Cadillac that's about 5 years old. If you were a carjacker, would you come after the 10-year-old Sentra, or would you go after the 5-year-old Cadillac? What do you think the carjacker's going to probably do? They're not looking for an old beat-up car like I'm driving. So one of my reasons for not driving high-dollar cars is to avoid getting carjacked by somebody who doesn't want to earn some money and buy their own. Okay, the last one I have, number 7, is on page 278. Sometimes we get so enmeshed in the details of a problem that we lose sight of the obvious. If we stop thinking about the problem for a while, we may return to it from a new angle. You do this all the time, maybe without thinking about it. Just last night, my wife and my daughter were talking about someone that my daughter met at church, and she mentioned the first name, and I said, yeah, I know that guy. And Nina said, what's his last name? And I said, I can't think of it, but give me a little bit and it'll come to my mind. And then what do you do if you can't think of a name? You just let it go, and then what happens just a couple of 3 minutes later? It pops into your head. Do all of you know that technique? If you're trying hard to remember something and you can't remember it because you're concentrating too hard, relax a little bit and go on with your conversation, and it'll pop in your head later on. You didn't know that one? Write some of these things down so you can use them in the future. Where does creativity come from? It says on page 278. Well, is God creative? Is God the great creator? Did he make us in his image and likeness? So when he created us, he gave us some of his creative capacities. Not the same ones, of course. If he would have given us his creative capacities, what would you do if you were standing out in your yard and saying, I wish I had an apple tree in my yard? You would just say, apple tree up here in my yard. And there it would be. So he didn't give us all of his creative abilities, but he gave us a substantial amount of those creative abilities where we can be creative. Probably the thing that stifles creativity more than anything else is somebody does something that's creative and the people who live in a box say, that's not acceptable, that's ridiculous, that won't work. Years ago when there was a fuel crisis and talking about fuel shortages and the price of gas going out of sight, I said, Nina, I just read about something at the library that will solve our problem for the fuel shortage. And she said, what's that? And I said, it's a PPV, a people-powered vehicle. And it was in like a science magazine, and it showed where they had taken a bicycle. Have you seen these bicycles where the guy's riding his bike, but he's kind of in a reclining position? They took one of those bicycles and they put kind of a fiberglass shell around it to make it aerodynamic so it would get through the air without a lot of resistance. And they showed a guy pedaling one of those things down an interstate on his way to work, and it was so easy to make this thing work that he didn't even work up a sweat, so he's wearing his suit and his tie on his way to work. I said, I could just go buy one of these things, and we only live a couple of miles from school, so you and the girls can walk to school, and I'll just ride this people-powered thing to work every day. And then what gas we have, we'll keep it in the station wagon to use when we go on trips. And her reaction was, I don't think that would work. I'm thinking, did any of you ride a bicycle when you were younger? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, would that work? For those who've ridden bicycles, would that work? If that thing was geared to where I could crank it up to 40 miles an hour coming down the interstate, and I lived 15 miles away, it wouldn't take me long to get here. I'd leave a little early, but look at the good workout I'd get. I'd be in such great shape at the end of the school year from pedaling my little pedal car to work. And probably, if we would have reached that place in our society where we ran out of gasoline, they would probably start making them with 2 seats, so you and another guy could take turns pedaling out here, or pedal together and get a friend to ride with you. But since that didn't happen, nobody started building them. But if we would have... So when you hear people talk about, we're going to run out of fossil fuel someday, so what are all of you going to do when you run out of fossil fuel? You'll come up with an alternative. You'll come up with another way to get around, another way to make it happen. I just read over the weekend that there's a train in some country that's running on hydrogen. And there's lots of that out there. So creativity is a gift from God first, and then in terms of it showing up in real life, it just comes from people thinking of, I'll try that, I'll see what happens, I'll do that, and I'll try something novel and different. Okay, that takes care of what, problem solving? Yeah, so let me give you, I don't know if this is helpful or not, but it's just because I like to give handouts. So here's a problem solving handout. So you've got stuff you can, at the end of the semester, you can keep this stuff laying around and use it for your other classes or just for general purposes in life. Thank you. And maybe it'll help you, and maybe it won't. And if you have some questions about it, you can ask tomorrow or Wednesday. Page 281, decision making. Might as well give you this one. The 5-step decision making process. So when it comes to making a decision, most of us make decisions all the time. And often we make them without thinking about them. Identify or clarify the decision to be made. It says decision making is a special kind of problem solving. In which we already know several possible solutions or choices. The task is not to come up with new solutions, but to identify the best available solution or the best available choice that comes closest to meeting your needs and goals. Have any of you ever been to a restaurant where you can go back and get as much food as you want and eat as much as you want? Anybody know why I would like restaurants like that? Because you get more food for your money? Well, when I was younger, it didn't matter how much I ate, I would burn it off. Now that I'm getting older, it's pretty sad. I was at Price Chopper last week, and there was this big old apple cobbler that just looked delicious, and it was $2.50. And I can't pass up a bargain, so I bought it. And I brought it home, and it was delicious. And I consumed that entire apple cobbler. My wife tasted a little bit of it and said, yes, it is good, but I don't think it's good for us. And she didn't eat any more of it. Well, I ate some every day. And then it was so good, I'd eat a little bit, and then I'd go back and get a little bit more. So after about 4 days, I had consumed this whole big pan of apple cobbler. Any idea what happened when I stepped on the scale to see if it affected my weight? I couldn't believe it. Just from eating that apple cobbler. Well, you know, I did one other thing. Since I was breaking my eating habits to eat some apple cobbler, I might as well drink a bottle of, what's my favorite beverage that I quit drinking because my doctor said it wasn't good for me? Mountain Dew. So between the Mountain Dew and the apple cobbler, I actually in about 4 days gained 4 pounds. Just like that. And I'm going, whoa, I can't believe that. And Nina said, well, that's what you get. She said, I told you, you ought not be eating all that stuff. So I made a decision to buy something because it was cheap, that looked good, that I really shouldn't be a part of my diet or my eating habits. I don't like to think I have a diet. I just have changed my eating habits. And it added 4 pounds to me just like that. So what do I do if I want to get rid of those 4 pounds? Does anyone know what you have to do if you decide you want to lose some weight? You walk around being hungry all the time. Isn't that what it amounts to? You eat smaller portions. You finish eating, you're still hungry. You go to bed at night, you're hungry. But if you do that for about a week, if you walk around being hungry for about a week, you'll lose those 4 pounds. And I think I've lost 3 of them and have 1 more to go to get back to where I was before I bought the cobbler. Did I make a bad decision buying that cobbler? Okay, let me ask you this way. Now that I bought it and I ate it and it did that to me, if I go to Price Chopper this week and start looking for stuff on sale and I go over there and check out the cobbler section where they sell that stuff and they have another one for $2.50, will I buy another one? Now, see, Sedate's going, no. What she means is she wouldn't buy another one, but I love apple cobbler so much that I just might pick another one up. No, 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 my wife would say if I came home with it. So since I know I have that weakness, making decisions. I go to the store, I get the ad from Price Chopper, I go to the store looking for bargains. I walk in the store and to the right is the bakery section where they have the apple cobblers. I don't even go over there. I look at the list of stuff I'm going to buy. It's all to the left. I go buy it. And while I'm walking them down the aisles, picking up all the stuff, what's my mind saying? You think they have cobbler on sale for $2.50? It doesn't matter. I'm not going over there. It was very tasty. I don't care. I'm not going over there. You have this big internal struggle with yourself, talking to yourself about what you're going to do or not going to do. And that's called decision making. And we all make decisions all the time. It's just that sometimes we think about them and sometimes we don't. In fact, I think that's what one of the things it says there, doesn't it, is identify the decision to be made, identify possible options, gather, process information, and then make or implement a decision, and then evaluate the decision after you've made it to see if it was a good one or not. And if it wasn't, don't make that decision again. Page 282 talks about logical decision making. It seems to me like the most logical thing I can do when it comes to making a decision is asking God for wisdom. Doesn't James tell us that? Where is it? James chapter 1, verse 5, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all without reproach. There's some other things there in James that are worth reading. Read them and look at them. But one of them is logical decision making. You want to buy a car? They give an example on page 282. And after shopping around, you've identified a number of possible choices within your budget. How do you make a decision? The logical way to proceed is to decide on a set of criteria, rate each of the available choices according to this criteria, then add up the pros and cons to see how well each choice matches your criteria. Each choice will probably have attractive features that offset or compensate for unattractive features. Thus, the approach is called the compensatory model of decision making. Is that the way you buy a car? You go, no. If my car breaks down, I call my father and he goes out and buys me another one. Well, if you had to buy your own car, what would you do? A few years ago, I bought a car that had a fantastic service record and just ran and ran and ran and never broke down. It was a 2005 Toyota Corolla. And that little car just goes and goes and goes. So when my grandson came back from Moscow and needed a car to drive to college, I said, you know what, bud? It seems to me like the best thing we ought to do is start shopping for a 2005 Toyota Corolla. And so we shopped for one till we found one with low mileage and a good deal on it. And we bought it, and he's been driving that thing for, I think, 4 years now. And it's still running great. And I have another grandson coming along who's going to need a car. And I'm thinking, if he says, so Poppy, what should I do? I said, let's go look for a 2005 Toyota Corolla. Wait a minute. How old would a 2005 Toyota Corolla be now? 13 years old? If it has 20,000 miles a year on it, in 10 years, that's 200,000 miles. That's probably too many miles on a car, isn't it, to be buying it? Well, I don't know. If the Toyota keeps running, maybe it isn't. I mean, figure out a criteria for how you'll make a decision as to how you buy stuff. Do any of you eat peanut butter? Only a couple of us. Well, my grandsons love it. So anytime it goes on sale at the store, I buy it. It happens that this week, Hy-Vee, just in case you want to buy some peanut butter, is selling peanut butter for 88 cents a jar. And the normal price is $1.80 a jar. But it's limit too. So what does that mean? I go to the store once this week and buy 2 jars of peanut butter. Not with the number of grandchildren I have who like peanut butter. Let's see, I went to the store last week and bought some. On Friday, stopped there on my way home from school. And then Sunday after church, I stopped in and bought 2 more. And today on my way home, I told my wife I'm going to stop into Hy-Vee and buy 2 more jars of peanut butter. And when my grandsons come over, and I'll say, hey bud, before you go home, grab a couple of jars of peanut butter and take it with you. And he'll look in the pantry and go, whoa, where'd all this peanut butter come from? I go, on sale at Hy-Vee, 88 cents. Now it was limit 2, but I just make enough trips to buy a whole bunch of it. Because that's part of my decision-making process, is finding bargains. Okay, I think the best way to become a good decision maker is to practice making decisions and learn from your mistakes. On page 285, there's a cute little section on explaining our decisions. Hindsight, looking back, we look back and say, whoa, that was a bad decision. So, well, I didn't know. See, we start kind of excusing ourselves. Well, I didn't realize. I didn't know. A guy from church recommended him for an auto mechanic, so I thought he'd do a good job. Well, he didn't. So now what? Well, now I just don't go back to him anymore. So, basically, this explaining our decisions, we often try to justify making a bad decision. Just learn to admit, I made a bad decision. That was a bad idea. And hopefully I'll learn from that. Maybe I will and maybe I won't. But I'll try to learn from that. My grandsons wanted to play basketball. I'm out there playing basketball with them. I jump to shoot a ball and I hit the ground and hear this pop. And I'm going pop, and I look down at my foot and I pick it up and I can't bend my foot. It's just kind of wobbling there. And I'm going, whoop, boys, I think I broke something. I better go in the house. And I hobbled in the house and got on the internet to read what had happened. And I touched back in the back of my heel where your Achilles tendon is. There was nothing there. You could just pinch the skin together. The Achilles tendon had popped, broke, and snapped up on my leg and snapped down around my heel, and it was not connected. So I couldn't move my foot. And the internet said, you'll have to have a doctor sew it back together again. So I called my doctor and told him, and he gave me the name of a specialist who could fix it. I called him, and sure enough, I went in to see him, and he goes, how did this happen? And I said, playing basketball with my grandsons. And he looked at me, and he said, you would think a guy your age would know better than that. And I said, yeah, but my grandsons are kind of cool guys, and I like to play games with them. He said, well, you better start playing other kinds of games like checkers and dominoes, because basketball isn't going to work for you. You better give up that physical activity. And he said, I could sew this back together, but it's going to take a while for it to heal. And I said, how long? He said, well, if you were a younger man, it would take maybe 6 months, but for you it's going to take about a year to a year and a half. I'm going, whoa. And he stitched it up, put me in a boot, and told me I have to be in a wheelchair for a while. You should have seen that semester when I was teaching math from a wheelchair. I was wheeling around to the board and writing up here. I learned to do all kinds of things in a wheelchair. And guess what I discovered since I was in a wheelchair? When you go to the Royal Stadium, you can buy cheap tickets and sit right up front. Well, hey, it turned out to be okay. I just learned a lesson from it. And it's like, okay, I made a mistake. Now, I'm not going to do that anymore, but I don't regret playing basketball with my grandsons. But one of them was home from college, and he said, hey, Papa, you want to go out and shoot some hoops? And I'm going, nope. And he just laughed, and he said, I know what happened the last time we did that. Okay, that's enough of chapter 7. Let's turn over here to page 293, and let's start chapter 8. Chapter 8 is all about intelligence and mental abilities. Have you ever had anyone say to you, you are really smart? You have? Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Have you had anyone say to you, you are really smart? You have? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of you? So, why did they say you are really smart? What did you do right before they said that?
I thought of something clever.
You thought of something clever. What did you do, 7?
I don't remember any specific time.
Oh, what did you do?
Oh, I helped my brother with his homework.
You helped your brother what?
His homework.
with his homework and he said you're really smart? He didn't know that before? No, now he does, yeah. What did you do?
I was probably talking to somebody about school and what they're doing and what I'm doing in school, and they're like, oh, you're really smart.
All right.
My great uncle was like, I bet you couldn't make a pun about corn cereal, and I said, well, I could, but it'd be too corny. He said that was pretty smart.
Okay. And what were you doing when they said you were smart?
Wow.
Oh. Rest of you have anyone tell you you're smart? Well, all you have to do is just do something that somebody thinks is smart, and you'll hear them say that. What did I tell you? I have some index cards here that I'm going to give out today in my math class. And the other day, when we reached a place in the textbook where we had to measure some things, I said, see this index card? Okay, this is a 3x5 card. So it's 3 inches from here to here. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 spaces. So that means 12 divided by 3. There are 4 spaces make an inch. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, another 4 spaces make an inch. You follow what's going on? So now just by marking off every 4 spaces, you've made a little 1, 2, 3 inch ruler out of an index card. And it even shows 1/4 of an inch increments when you're measuring stuff. Now I've been doing this for years, teaching mathematics, and this happened. This is the first time this has happened in all the years I've taught math. People just take that and they put it in their book and they make a little ruler and they measure the stuff they had to measure. And somebody came up to me, somebody online. They typed online, that was genius. I'm going, whoa, how cool is that? I have now become a genius because of my little index card ruler idea. Now, I'm not a genius, but you understand? If you do something that people attribute to smart people, you'll probably hear that someday. If you haven't heard it yet, it doesn't mean you're not smart. It just means you haven't shown your true colors yet. You still haven't let people see how smart you are. Well, just to show you how smart we are, we're going to take, on page 293 and 294, we're going to take a test. So you have your books open? Page 293. Okay, the first question. Describe the difference between laziness and idleness. Now, I'm not going to answer that question, but I just want to make a note of that question. That's a question that has to do with knowing what words mean. You follow me? That's a word kind of question. So, do any of you read Reader's Digest? No. In the Reader's Digest, it has this little section in there called Expanding Your Vocabulary, and they introduce you to new words that you've never heard before. They tell you what they mean and how to use them in a sentence. Okay, I'm really good with math, but I'm not very good with words. So when I went to graduate school and had to take a graduate record exam to show that I was smart enough to work on a PhD, half of the test, the graduate record exam, is half word questions, like questions 1 and 3 and 7 and 9, and the other half basically was mathematical problems. So what I did was I got a bunch of those Reader's Digest books about 21 Days to a Larger Vocabulary, and I studied a bunch of those words. And when I went to take the graduate record exam, it was like they got a lot of their words out of the Reader's Digest. So I did well on the English part, even though I'm not that much of a reader. because I had studied for that part of the test. The math part, I just do that for fun, so that's why we're talking about those. Well, I say math, it's the verbal part and the nonverbal part. So question 2 is a nonverbal question. Which direction would you have to face so your right hand would be facing the north? Now here's my right hand, okay? Watch this. I just read this question. This is an IQ question. Which direction would you have to be facing so your right hand would be facing the north? Okay, this is my right hand. I'm assuming they want to know where I'd be facing if this palm of my hand was facing north. Is that what they ask? So I would be facing what? If the palm of my hand was facing north. Which way would I be facing? That's north, so what does that make that?
East.
East. That's the wrong answer. Which direction would you have to face so your right hand would be facing the north? Right hand facing the north? You mean my right hand would be on the north side of my body? You follow what I'm saying? I'd have to be facing west. Now, why did I miss that question? Because I'm not smart? Because it was a poorly worded question, wasn't it? It wasn't a very well written question. Now, the guy who wrote it would say, that just shows you how he's not very smart. And I would say, that just shows you how the guy who wrote the question isn't very smart. And we have a disagreement as to who's smarter. And again, a smart guy said to me one time, Tom, you read too much into this stuff. I just take people for what they say. So be careful when you're looking at a test and it says, oh, you missed this one. It could be that it's just a poorly worded question. Look at number 4. In what way are an hour and a week alike? How are an hour and a week alike? They both do what?
They both have 2 vowels.
They both have what?
2 vowels.
They both have hours in them?
2 vowels.
2 vowels? Okay, so both words have 2 vowels in them. Now see, that's a good answer, but that's not the one they give in the answer key. And see, here's what they didn't say. In what way are the word hour and the week and the word week alike? They said, in what way are the concept of an hour and the concept of a week alike?
They're both measurements of time.
They both measure time. Does everybody agree with that? They both measure time? Yeah, but they just weren't clear in the way they wrote the question. So if you do poorly on an IQ test, and these are actually questions taken from IQ tests, what does that tell you? Somebody who's writing IQ tests
Aren't very smart.
are not writing very clear questions, are they? Okay, so you can look those over. Number 8, if 3 pencils cost 25 cents, how many pencils can you buy for 75 cents? What's the answer? 3 pencils for 25 cents? How many pencils for 75 cents? 9. Everyone see how you got that? 3 times 25 is 75. 3 times 3 is 9. Just a math question. Well, now you see why people don't like intelligence tests. And then on page 294, they have all these figures that you have to look at and figure out which one, number 12. The first 3 figures are alike in some way. Find the figure at the right that goes with the first 3. Page 294, look at number 12. A, B, C, D, or E. Which one goes with the first 3?
B.
And why does B go with the first 3?
Because it's like bigger to smaller as it goes up.
Okay, it gets smaller as it goes up, but so does C. Yeah, but look at this. The first one was circle, the second one triangle, third one is square, what would the fourth one have? 5 sides? And that would be B, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's why you would choose B instead of C. And see, that's why I say reading these questions is fun, but what's more beneficial to you is to look back and read the answers to see how they're thinking. Oh, that's what they're talking about. That's what they're talking about. And don't get mad because you missed the question. It could be it's just a poorly written question, and you're smarter than what the test says you are. They just didn't word the question well, and don't let that mess with you. Page 295. It says, intelligence refers to a person's general intellectual ability. Thus, intelligence tests are usually designed to test general mental ability. Now, you know how I know all of you in this room are highly intelligent? How I just personally know that. I've observed enough already this semester to know that you are highly intelligent. What have I observed that would make me come to that conclusion? What have you done so far that I've seen you do that would make me describe you as highly intelligent? Have you written some chapter summaries? I've read your summaries. They're very well written. Those are the kind of summaries that intelligent people write. You follow me? And I've read summaries written by a lot of intelligent people. So trust me, you folks have good verbal skills. The other thing is, don't you make a list of internet sites that you look at? Well, there you go. You know why I think you're highly intelligent? Because you know how to use the internet to find information. You follow? I'm not just making this up. There's another reason I know you're highly intelligent, is you're taking psychology. Now, think of all the stuff we've already learned in this class, and we're just about halfway through the course. Think of all the useful stuff you've learned in this class already. Highly intelligent people take this class. Isn't that why you took it? Because you said, I'm going to learn some stuff that's going to help me in life? You go, no. Then why'd you take it? Is it a required course in your program of study? It is? You just took it for the fun of it? All right. That just makes you a little more, okay, how many took it just because it's a required course in your program of study? 1, 2. Okay, now see, that's smart. I mean, that's smart, because if you want to get a college degree, you take all the required courses, whether you like them or not. That shows a high level of intelligence. Now, no disrespect for the two of you who took it because it's required, but she's just a little bit smarter than you are, in my humble opinion. Why? Because she took it just because she wanted to. All right. How cool is that? You say, I think your definition of intelligent is somewhat biased. Well, if you look at the theories on page 295 and 296 and 297, it sounds like everybody's kind of got his own little bias, doesn't it? And the one that I love here, and it tells you, right in the middle of page 295, it says this, compare your own description of intelligence with those listed in table 8.8-1. Was your description closer to that of the layperson or the experts? Which of the characteristics of intelligence do you think are most important? So it says, look at that table on page 296. Characteristics of intelligence as seen by laypersons and experts. Lay people say practical problem-solving ability, verbal ability, and social competence are the three basic parts of an intelligent person. Experts, I crossed out experts. Does anyone know who the experts are? Does it say how they put this together? Okay, see where the source is Sternberg, 1982? Okay, you know what Sternberg did? He asked some lay people about intelligence, and he put together what they said about it. Then he asked some psychologists to describe intelligence. Psychologists who study intelligence, and he asked them to describe intelligence. So what does he call the psychologists? Experts. I'm thinking he should have just said, no, here's a layperson's perspective and here's a psychologist's perspective. And I don't know if the psychologist is any more of an expert than the layperson. You follow what I'm saying? Watch out when you're reading things, watch for the emotion in the words they use. Because if this is what an expert says on the right, and I agree with a layperson, then I must not have very much expertise. No, I just agree more with lay people than I do with psychologists. So change that word experts to psychologists. And it was research, but he should have called them psychologists because that's what they were. And I agree with a lot of things that psychologists say make an intelligent person. Now see, they call it problem-solving ability, but it's like they make good decisions, they display common sense, they show objectivity, they're good at solving problems, they plan ahead. Oh, that's another reason I know you're intelligent. I look at my attendance sheet, and this class meets at 8 o'clock in the morning. And you have all figured out. Pretty much, you're very successful at figuring out how to make yourself wake up and get to class on time at 8 o'clock in the morning. That makes you highly intelligent. Oh, yes you do. Sometimes things, you plan to be here on time, but something just interfered with the process. And the reason I understand that is that's the way my wife is wired. And you know what's funny? She made better grades in college than I did. I was more about being on time, and it isn't like she can't be on time. It's just that if she gets ready on time, then she always gets ready a little early, but then if she's ready early, she thinks of something. Any of you think like this? She thinks of something that she can do before she leaves, and then she gets busy doing it, and it takes more time than she thought, and it makes her late. Because she always gets up before I do to get ready for church on Sunday. And sometimes I deliberately set my alarm on Sunday just as late as I can. So she'll come and say, Tom, do you know what time it is? You're going to be late to church. And then I go, I don't think so. And then I have my morning routine down so fast that I can zip through everything I need to take care of and be out the door and sitting in the car about 5 minutes before we need to leave to go to church. And I'll say, I'll be out in the car waiting, Nina. And so I go out to the car and she goes, I don't see how you can get ready so quickly. I know, I'm just Speedy Gonzalez. And it just baffles her. But we've talked about that, where she gets up in plenty of time. She just doesn't want to waste any time, and she doesn't want to get someplace early. Well, that's another thing. She doesn't want to get there early, but she doesn't want to be late. So she wants to be what? Right on time. if you plan to be here at exactly 8 o'clock every day, what's the mathematical probability that some days you won't make it till 8:01 or 8:02? You understand? Something will happen that if I made that my game plan, somebody would have my parking spot and then I'd have to park someplace else and walk a little further. So it's just a matter of, when you look at these two characteristics, lay people and psychologists, and label them psychologists, and then make a list of what you think makes an intelligent person, and look to see what on the list you like, and you say, hey, you know what? I can do a lot of those things. That makes me intelligent. And then I started looking for some places to add to the list to make it longer. And I found in a dictionary that it says intelligence is learning from our experiences. Now here's what I was taught. You learn from your mistakes. That's that's intelligence. Responding successfully to a new situation. You encounter a new situation and you figure out how to cope with it. That's a measure of intelligence. The word I put down, that I don't know if I saw it anywhere in here, but I put down resourcefulness. I just think intelligent people are resourceful. And on Wednesday, I'll give you Gardner's little handout where it talks about all the different kinds of intelligence, so we can talk about them and see who has the most of which kind. And what I think is interesting is God gave all of us an extra portion of something, but then all of us have areas where we don't have very much of it, and in those areas we're not very intelligent, but that's okay. In another area we're highly intelligent. Okay. Why did this thing do that? There it is. See you on Wednesday.